Hi there, it's Martin Rapley here with a video reminder about a critical stage of your refurbishment project that is so frequently overlooked and could, in the worst extreme, lead you to prosecution. Now, I don't really want to be talking doom and gloom, and in reality, when I talk about prosecution, that is the extreme. But also in reality, it is so easy to get this little part of the process right. Yes, it will cost you money, but we're here to do things properly, and ultimately we all want to avoid prosecution. The little stage that I'm talking about is way before the building works even start. It's very early on as part of the initial planning and preparation to get things going. And the thing I'm talking about is an asbestos survey. It's actually legislation that before you appoint a builder to carry out work in your property, you need to be able to demonstrate to that builder that there is no asbestos in the building, or if there is asbestos in the building, that it is in a safe situation, or you want the builder to remove it in a safe way. You are not allowed to let the builder just make a start on site on the basis he might find some asbestos. You're also not allowed to say, well, I've walked around and I couldn't see any asbestos. You are supposed to appoint a specialist surveyor that can come in and carry out a sample test of various elements of the building where, in their expert opinion, there may be some asbestos. Now, let's just a little bit of background on asbestos. It was a product used within English construction as a means of insulation. Partially thermal insulation, but also to guard against fire and things like that. It was used extensively up until about 1990 something. Unclear, and of course it phased out as well. So it's difficult to say when it was phased out, but certainly somewhere in the 1990s we got to a point that we weren't using it any longer. In commercial buildings, it can be everywhere. I've seen commercial buildings, hospitals and big offices and things like that, where there is rakes and rakes of asbestos that has to be dealt with before commencing any works. And so if you're finding an office building that you want to convert into residential, there is always a chance that there's a lot of asbestos in it. When we come to residential buildings, there could be asbestos in a whole number of residential buildings, typically behind electrical fuse boards, sometimes within what look like vinyl floor tiles, commonly in what we would call Artex, that's the textured finish that we put on ceilings and some on walls, but we can also have asbestos panels, asbestos flues from the boiler, and things like that. So a lot of properties do still have asbestos in, even though we've been removing asbestos now since the 1990s. Clearly, if a building hasn't been refurbished or changed hands since the 1990s, then there is a massive chance there's still some insulation in there. So you need to appoint someone to go along and do you an asbestos survey of the building. Let me give you an indication as to what that might be. You may well pay a fee of somewhere in the region, perhaps only £150 or so, £200 depending on the size of the building, for someone to do the survey. But they will normally then charge a figure, maybe £15 per sample that they take on top of that. And they will only take samples of things that they think are high risk. Recently, I bought an HMO. It was built in about 1920 or so. The only asbestos in the whole building was one piece of board behind a gas fire. So the house was almost certainly built without any asbestos, and actually this board was brought in at the point where someone subsequently installed a gas fire. So that was a very easy one to remove. Didn't cost us a great deal, but in some buildings you are going to find some more. Now let me give you a little tip here. Particularly applies if you are buying a commercial building that had a business running in it. There was legislation brought out 20, probably even 30 years ago now, 20 years at least ago, that said that anyone who had a commercial building with a business being carried out in it had to have an asbestos survey carried out and had to have an asbestos register compiled, which is effectively saying this is the asbestos in the building, or this building has got no asbestos in it, or this is the asbestos it had but it has now been removed and here's the certificate of that. Now if you're buying a commercial building, it's really important that you ask your solicitor as part of the conveyance process to see if there is an asbestos register with that building. Because if there is, you don't need to pay someone else to do that survey for you. You can rely on this asbestos register. You may still need to employ someone to remove asbestos if it's still there, but you can at least rely on this survey. In a lot of commercial buildings, if the asbestos was of a lower risk and not likely to get damaged, it was left in situ, assuming the building wasn't refurbished. Whereas in residential properties, the encouragement is to take it out as much as possible because people in residential properties do DIY, and DIY is where it's very easy to cut through something that is asbestos without knowing about it. So this is a really important part of your whole refurbishment process. Get it done nice and early. All the good builders will ask for an asbestos survey anyway, but you don't want to be holding up the builder getting started whilst you're trying to sort out an asbestos survey. So get it done nice and early, and factor in the works that are necessary accordingly, and then you can deal with it accordingly. So don't forget to like and share this video. I look forward to catching up with you in another one soon.